What are the main security problems associated with cloud computing?
Well, cloud computing is still in development phase and brings great security challenges. First security problem I see is data location. It's located in various parts of the cloud. A user may not be aware of where the data is located. All the organizations that are part of this cloud, they may not be following compliance like ISO 27001. And other thing is, if the users are not aware where the data is, they may not be well connected with the service providers to kind of monitor the traffic, and they may not have enough devices to filter the traffic to block all the malicious content that's coming through. And if all the service providers don't have enough resources for security, then chances are they won't manage security very well. Either a malicious attack would happen and it will take them on the core devices. If on the other side, they can probably not maintain the devices well, and they actually block legitimate traffic. So I think we need a huge investment in security enterprise, and there needs to be a lot of transparency as well. So user is aware where the data is stored, what kind of reputation these companies have, what security measures they have in place. This is the main threat I would say.
Okay, thanks, Sundeep. Sudhakar, so you train people in how to deal with some of these issues. Can you tell us a bit about a bit more about the main issues you train people on, and what's the training? What's what methods do you use to deal with these problems?
Okay. Good afternoon. And basically, there is a Cloud Security Alliance body, which is a formal body recognized for developing standards for security in the cloud. They have proposed around 14 domains, all related from the basics of where the data is located, the architectural model, the virtualization, vulnerabilities, plus whereas all the data at rest, data in motion, all these kinds of threats that are being attacked. All these kinds of how to recommend how to physically try and resolve these issues are being proposed by the body, the Cloud Security Alliance, and they have an extensive, complete book of knowledge. So they provide all the scenarios, they provide you various kinds of recommendations, and these are the things that we try to bring out to the people, to the corporate people, to the students, and to the world at large. How to adopt all these new practices, how to take up the latest of encryption, like homomorphic encryption is one of the latest strategies, how to overcome various attacks like the Trojan horse to the beast, that is the latest attack that has come up about. So these are some of the aspects that we try to bring them to the audience, as well as certain practical aspects also we try to conduct in the labs.
Thank you. I should say we can take some questions from the floor. I have a few more questions myself. We can come back to the floor and take some questions shortly. Kemal, so you look at things from a Middle East regional perspective. Are there any sort of regional characteristics that we should be aware of with regards to security and cloud computing?
Yeah. Good afternoon. Actually, I could not say something specifically could be applied here, but especially I would like to emphasize a little operator view because of my background. So mainly in this region, the operators and the regulations, time to time limiting cloud types of services. For example, one of the cloud beauty is just hosting a solution across the board, and have the capability to use it in different countries and with a really small cost. But we are seeing that time to time this is not possible. And I will end it afterward touch on the telco cloud. So this fashion, I would say, or trend, is just shifting from the IT domain to the telco domain. So that means that in the long term, in a few years time frame, we will see more and more this type of virtualization and flexibility and floating of those functions and applications all around the network. That means that we need to be prepared in this region to to have this floating applications in our networks or hosted somewhere else. So I believe that the regulations must be ready for this type of approach.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Ahmed, we spoke before the panel, and you mentioned you had a couple of examples of regulatory and legal issues within the region, GCC and broader Middle East, that are relevant to this topic. Could you tell us a little about those examples?
Fine, okay. Hello everyone. Before start to move to cloud, okay, you must make sure that your laws and regulations is allow you to move your client's data and customer's data outside the country. For example, what about if CSP go to a company in the United Kingdom, tell them that he will go take the data to his cloud, the data will be available and will take all the advantage of the cloud, but the data center is in US, okay? And no one will show and will access this data, okay? There are a legal problem here because the laws and the regulations in US allow the US government to access the data in any computer landed in US. So the data will be accessed without the customer knowledge, or will be a problem if he knows. Okay, so this is an example for the problem because the majority also of the majority of data centers is in US. So all data access and the data adhere to the laws and the regulations of US governments and US federal laws. Okay, for example, Privacy Act and SOX Act and such as these acts and laws. Okay, this was the examples.
Okay. Sorry, Martin, do you have something to?
I think the second thing was the data backup problems and so data backup strategy.
Okay, would you want to elaborate on that?
The second problem is in the data backup and the data backup problems. The data backup must be maintained by the CSP. Fine, but the data backup be landed in another country. This will be a very bad problem because there are regulations to transfer the data between countries. In Arab countries, we have a problem that we haven't the laws and the regulations that adhere, that make or define the personal information and that define the security breaches, that define privacy information that must be adhered to these laws. Okay, so we must legislate these laws and these regulations to solve our problems and make our data secure and the personal identified information of our citizens be in a secure way if we move to cloud.
Okay, so basically the data protection legislation is not there the way it is in other regions. Is that correct?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me ask another question. So, in this environment where data is held remotely and so on, who's the primary person responsible for security? When there's so many players, there's the individual, there's the company, might be an IT provider, there might be a telco. Sundeep, who is responsible?
But initially, I think it's the service provider who's responsible. But at the moment, there are various service providers. They all have their own ideas, and they all think the threat levels are different for each of them. So I think what we need is a kind of standardized process. All the security providers need to sort of come together and make a standard approach to the whole scenario. So each customer will have some confidence into this standardized approach. They will know exactly what they're going to get, whether the data is stored UK, US, Saudi Arabia, wherever. They will know exactly what they are getting, what kind of security measures are in place. So I think that's one of them.
Okay, and how close or how far away are we from that?
I think we are quite far away. There's no sort of history into cloud computing data breaches or security attacks at the moment because it's still in development phase. Looking at normal IP fixed line networks, we've seen quite a lot of attacks, and recent years of government sites have been taken down. And also, the hackers are getting very intelligent nowadays. All the tools are available over the internet for free, I suppose. We need to sort of evaluate what sort of data we held on cloud computing and the amount of data that we need to scan and have enough security measures. I think that will come in time. I don't think we know at the moment what kind of measures or what kind of infrastructure we need in place. But that be something we can take through development phase.
Okay. Yes, of course.
Yeah, Amazon Web Services, they propose a shared responsibility model. They say the infrastructure and other the data mining facilities and all that will be taken up by the service provider, whereas for IaaS and PaaS, all applications and all the virtual machines and the security and the operating systems based on that, they should be held responsible by the customer or the client. So it's a shared responsibility model that they should be owned as such.
Just as a basic, so we can say that depending on the model, the responsibility will change. For example, if the service provider is just giving infrastructure as a service, that means their generally responsibility is limited by this way. So that is including security. But if both tenant and service providers agree to have platform as a service, so then we can talk about the combination of both responsibilities. On the other hand, if tenant just have a software as a service or application as a service, we can think that tenant have much more responsibility for its own domain. So we can have a split like that.
Okay.
Can I have a comment?
Yes.
I think that the security must be on the CSP side because the data is located on CSP, okay, and we must have we have a key management and data is encrypted. The key management, the key must not be stored in the cloud. The key management must be separated between the cloud and managed by the customer. So, if it's fair, a model as Mr. Erman told us, for example, the infrastructure, and I read just the infrastructure, okay, and everything is related to me, fine. The applications and the operating system security is related to you as a customer, but what surrounds this infrastructure is related to cloud service provider. Okay, when you select cloud service provider, you prefer the most secure one because the most concerns about the cloud is regarding security or due to the security. I think there was a survey from Gartner in 2009, okay, means that 70 of CTOs and CIOs prevent or stopped moving to cloud project because they have security concerns. So the security must be provided from the CSP to get more trust to the.
And how do you, as the customer, how do you measure that security? How do you assess which ones are more secure than others? Is there some objective measure, or is it just judgment about which one's better than others? Well, anyone really, since you raised the point, how would you judge which providers are more secure?
I think that, as Mr. Erman say as an example, if you rent just the infrastructure from the cloud service provider, let's say the operating system patching, the security concerns about the applications will be dedicated to the client, okay, and managed by the IT professionals on the client side. But what surrounds the physical security, maintaining the access to the data, transfers the data. What about if, God forbid, there are a disaster and we will move to subcontract? If subcontract is compliant with me as a cloud service provider, is compliant, for example, for PCI, because you are the customer, store at me as a CSP, store credit card information. Okay, credit card information required that you are PCI compliant. I am as CSP is PCI compliant. Okay, but my subcontract is not. So there are a breach. And I said that the advisor, you as a customer must make sure that when there are a disaster, I will move the data in a secure manner and will be stored in a secure place if it landed as a contract for a time for a very good time.
Do we have any questions from the floor? The panel here of security experts, do you have any pressing security questions? Gentleman over there, can we bring a mic to the gentleman in the second row? And just introduce yourself.
I understand that there are some cross-border information flow agreements such as safe harbor to information to cross-border or storing the information in other locations than the country of the information owner. Would this still, under these conditions, with some entities like the U.S. government, would they still have the right to access the information, and would they still be able to access if it's encrypted?
Of course, the US will have the right because there are acts, but I didn't remember this act or this law that if you make a new encryption, you must give the public key for the US government or
corporates must adhere to this condition.
Corporate, private, okay, so they must see every packet pass in the US. Okay, this is a law. Okay, if you land your data at US, you must adhere to this act and this law.
Any further questions from the floor? Yes, I think there's another one going in here, fourth row back. You just introduce yourself.
Sandeep from Ericsson. I have a specific question pertaining to UAE market. We have two regulatory bodies here. One is Central Bank, and the other one is the TRA. Now, TRA is regulating only the telecom services, not the ICT services. ICT services, including the CSP, these are all unregulated market over here. So, in this specific case, whose responsibility is for like Central Bank is ruling over the banks not to take data offshore. But here in this case, CSP can give you the certificate, PCI certifications and all those things, but are they assuring or are they signing any SLAs? That is not their projection. It is not governed by TRA. So it is still a grey area.
Okay, so
do you have any input on that?
Anyone on the panel have that? You want that?
Just to add something, it's today I watched the presentation for Salah. So for that reason, I believe really the operators invested in the cloud domain. That means public domain, also for the all infrastructure. So if there are some regulatory issues to change documentation or information or data outside the country, so then the operators' infrastructure becomes a safe area because they always regulate it. In some of the countries, in MENA, always regulators requested them to get the ISO 27001 certificate. So that means that already somehow control, and on the other hand, they could give the SLAs and the other stuff. So that means that personally, and I believe that operators could be a good provider, especially for small enterprises, medium-sized enterprises. But in the long term, we believe that their infrastructure also gets transformed to virtualized environment. But in that case, especially the operators having multiple opcos in different countries, if the regulation gives them the opportunity, they will have the possibility to host one application in one location and give the services to multiple countries. As of today, this is mainly on the IT domain, but think about to have, for example, one IMS node and giving some IMS-based services to multiple countries. So this is, as of today, is possible, but virtualization will be much more easy.
Okay, thanks. Sudhakar, towards a close, I'd like to give you a chance just to perhaps summarise what your advice would be on how to mitigate, how to minimise security risks associated with cloud. What would be your headline?
Some of the advices would be that have a data security plan in effect, and always encrypt your data, whether it's at rest or in transit. If possible, try and adopt homomorphic encryption, which will encrypt, which will have security all the way through end to end, from the client to the server and back, so that there is no scope for attackers, even for then it's decrypted to attack the data itself. Then you should adopt multi-factor authentication, at least a two-factor authentication. Make up all these various recommendations. I would suggest that you could all read through the documents suggested by Cloud Security Alliance, where they give lots of recommendations on various features like business continuity, incident response, the virtualization, security as a service, plus key management, digital signatures, various features are mentioned. I would suggest all of you can go through that article, that book of knowledge. A lot of valuable advice is presented.
Thank you very much. Just one final thought for me. Obviously, last week we saw this very big computing security scare, the Heartbleed bug, whether it classified as a cloud, I'm not quite sure. But I just wondered, this kind of thing seems to be cropping up more and more. If that continues, could that perhaps threaten, this model of the growth of cloud computing, or is this just something we'll have to learn to manage? Perhaps we'll need to manage it better. Any thoughts, Sundeep?
These new vulnerabilities, I think first step to take is good communication between customers and service providers. Make sure customers are patched against these vulnerabilities, and the organizations understand how it would impact the end user or the core devices, and make sure they got enough security professionals to filter the traffic and make sure it doesn't go through to ways trying to go to other core devices or end users, and really making sure all the organizations involved in cloud computing are aware of this vulnerability and they're taking enough measures. And we also need to provide enough training to all employees. It's not just security professionals, it's everyone in the organization who should follow best practice to make sure data is kept confidential, and like with password, we should give them training not to have very generic password. They should get enough training to create the very hard to crack password, and like Sudhakar said, two-factor authentication. These things should be passed on to all employees to keep data more secure.
Give a final thought there? Yes.
We have a time?
Yes.
Okay. The topic is very, very big, and we need to discuss it in more detail. I will just will add a note that in this discussion and the presentation, we didn't spoke about virtualization problems. And these virtualization problems, I mean the security concerns and the security problems what come from virtualization. Okay, we all know that cloud depends on virtualization. Okay, you should, as CSP, maintain the virtualization problems and the virtualization security levels, and the most baddest thing in the virtualization that we haven't a point in a physical hardware or in a physical system that separates the data, separate customer X data with customer Y data. So one of the questions the customer before go to CSP questions must ask them, if he needs to move to another cloud, or all the data must be down and we will rebuild it in the other cloud service provided from the began, or we can move the data easily. All this will be based on the virtualization structure, virtualization architecture, and the security professionals must pay more attention for the virtualization, especially the memory problem that was just about virtualization. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ahmed. I think we'll have to leave it there, but I'd like to thank all our panelists. Can we have a round of applause for them? Thank you, gentlemen. So we'll close the panel there.